Dear Bob, I know that you and Mother are anxiously awaiting my advice as to whether you should try to get into the Naval Academy. I've deliberately taken a few days to think it over and have decided to tell you something of my 4 years there and then let you decide for yourself. The day I piled out of a bus at the Naval Academy, I realized that all the candidates were just average American boys, sons of farmers, bakers, bankers, ministers, and from every state in the Union. The guard told us where to check in, and we learned right there that midshipmen don't enter the yard. They come aboard the United States Naval Academy. Once inside the gates, the Navy became our world, a very happy one filled with cheerful fellow candidates. Our first stop was to get a complete physical examination. Physical fitness and good health is a must at the academy. All we hoped here was that these two couldn't see each other. The eye test for color perception required us to pick out numbers hidden in color patterns of these cards. The figures stood out like a sore thumb once you saw them. I still remember taking the oath of office. It's one of the most dramatic moments in a naval officer's career.
Raise your right hands. Having been appointed a midshipman in the United States Navy, you do solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you are about to enter, so help you God.
I do.
Good luck to you.
We were carefully measured for our uniforms and were issued socks, shirts, jumpers, underwear, leggings, gloves, hats, and countless other items. It got so we could hardly count them, let alone carry them. And there were still blankets, pillows, sheets, and towels to get. We were assigned quarters in Bancroft Hall, named for George Bancroft, founder of the Naval Academy. They were roomy, well-lighted, and comfortable. I shared my room with a swell guy from Oklahoma, and this is how our friendship was born. Once we donned the uniform, we were fourth-classmen, plebes. Uniform looks the same on every midshipman. But looking like a midshipman and marching like one are two different matters. We soon corrected that, and it taught us to be alert, quick in attention and motion. Then we went on to the Manual of Arms. We were getting to be pretty good and discovered that practice makes perfect. Well, almost perfect. Days went by before we had an opportunity to look over the place that was to become our home for 4 years. The fine buildings and grounds are among the most beautiful in the world. There's also dignity here, and something more. There is tradition. One feels it, senses it every moment. The word that describes Bancroft Hall is splendor. 40 acres of floor space and 3.5 miles of corridors make it the largest single dormitory in the world. Once inside the massive bronze doors, one's eyes follow the grand marble staircase that leads to Memorial Hall. Enshrined here are treasured paintings and statuary of naval heroes such as John Paul Jones, Fighting Bob Evans, David Farragut, Oliver Hazard Perry, George Dewey, James Lawrence, whose immortal dying words, "Don't give up the ship," still echo throughout the naval service. The chapel, which dominates the grounds, is known all over the world for the beauty of its architecture and magnificent stained windows. Beneath chapel, in a hallowed crypt, are the remains of the immortal naval hero, John Paul Jones. Wielding his sword on the deck of the Bonhomme Richard, he shouted the famous, "I have not yet begun to fight," and snatched a great victory from near defeat. And there was the museum. It gave us a pretty complete history of our Navy, and thus our nation's history. Priceless battle relics and war trophies brought to life the epic of the American Navy from the days of its beginning. Upon this common mess table aboard the USS Missouri, Japan signed the Articles of Surrender, ending the Second World War. And there were the class rings, symbols of Academy days together. Ship models alone are among its most precious possessions. You'll see case after case of battle-scarred flags returned from missions to the four corners of the earth. Yes, the dignity of the Navy's heritage is all here. The Academy's educational halls are named in honor of American naval officers. History has made room for them among her heroes. Here we were instructed in courses from seamanship to jet propulsion and electronics. Studies designed to prepare us to man and later command fleets on the seas, above the seas, and beneath the seas. Many monuments dot the grounds. They are more than just stone, metal, or marble. In 1812, for instance, this baleful-looking figurehead was on the British frigate Macedonian, which was captured by the American frigate United States. And the Mexican monument, dedicated to naval officers who lost their lives in the Mexican War. This monument was inspired by the gallant action of naval officers against the Barbary pirates of Tripoli. The station ship, Reina Mercedes, referred to as the fastest ship in the Navy because it has been fast to a dock for 35 years, is a trophy of the Spanish-American War. One of the most impressive sights at the Academy is on Sundays, when the entire brigade of midshipmen answer church call. All midshipmen attend some kind of divine worship, either in the non-sectarian chapel or in a church of their own choice. The remainder of plebe summer was spent getting in the groove. From the instant we hit the deck at the all turned out, something new was being added every minute. We formed and marched to and from classes. Our good and faithful friend Chief Tecumseh, god of the 2.5, the minimum passing grade, stood by to accept our pre-exam prayers. The left-handed salute and a sacrificial shower of pennies to Tecumseh is supposed to help get one's grade up. In the rigging loft of Loose Hall, there are the mysteries of such knots as the fisherman's bend, the monkey fist, and the bowline on a bite. It could be called learning the ropes the hard way. In other classes, we learned everything that a naval officer should know. Characteristics of ship design, the rules of the road, towing, anchoring, navigation, mooring, radar, gunnery, engineering. And then boats. Who said the era of steam has come to stay? A naval officer must be proficient in handling all types of boats. First, we were introduced to whale boats and learned to board and lower them without spilling ourselves into the drink. We were pretty clumsy with the oars, but we got the hang of it, and it became a great sport. Besides, it built up our bodies. Later, as upperclassmen, we handled trim little yawls and showed off a bit for our girls. The end of plebe summer brought the return of the upperclassmen from their summer cruise, and our academic year began. Alert minds and strong bodies are products of good food, a healthy environment, and proper medical attention. These go hand in hand at the academy. You've probably heard that the academic grind is tough at the academy. It's no tougher than the average college course leading toward a Bachelor of Science degree. Actually, the small size of each class or section gave us an advantage in having individual instruction. We were also given every opportunity to put into actual practice what we had studied in the classroom. For instance, delving into the mechanical mysteries of a modern diesel installation, or learning to operate one of the Navy's latest torpedo tubes. Then getting on speaking terms with 5-inch dual-purpose guns. We were always taught the things most needed in our naval career, such as how to handle a ship in a rough sea. We not only received instructions in handling surface ships and submarines, but were given a concentrated course in aviation. The hours devoted to aviation equal in time that given other academic subjects. Thus, we learned the importance of naval air power and how to integrate it with ground, surface, and undersurface units. Beginning with basic structure and design problems, we went through classes in aviation engineering, jet propulsion, gas turbines, communications, and primary flight training. If it's sports you're interested in, you'll find them at the Naval Academy. And in keeping with its high tradition, you'll find the champions. From fencing to football, from basketball to boxing, the Navy is noted for its top-notch performance. A leader in the winter sports program is the basketball team. Annually, it meets the best teams in the nation. During my last year, it earned an invitation to the National Collegiates at Madison Square Garden in New York. Boxing, which teaches a young man to take as well as to give, is another of the popular sports down Annapolis way. Aggressiveness, courage, and physical fitness play their part in molding a naval officer. In wrestling, probably no other school possesses the fine record of the Navy. The blue and gold grapplers won 4 out of 5 of the last intercollegiate championships, a tribute to top-notch coaching and conditioning. Handed down from the fighting days of old comes fencing, where agility and adroitness symbolize the skill so necessary for this precise sport. Whether a young man has an aptitude for any one particular sport, gymnastics provide the opportunity for the development of many talents. Here is presented the chance for one to perform as an individual with skill, grace, and precision. Demanding in its training, gymnastics serve as a yardstick in measuring the advancement of a man's physical ability. In the beautiful natatorium at the Academy will be seen some of the nation's finest collegiate swimmers. Leading universities send their swimmers against Navy mermen. Not only its varsity crew, but every midshipman passes highly rated tests to ensure his ability to perform well in the water. It would be incongruous for the Naval Academy not to have a crew and not to have a good one. In the spring, sliding through the waters of the Severn, can be seen many boats used in training the crew for their meets and regattas. No Navy man feels out of place in a boat, and so it's only fitting that the crew record stands at the top. The first Eastern Intercollegiate Sprint Regatta was held at the Naval Academy. For those who like the links, and who doesn't, a beautiful 18-hole golf course has been provided. Proving as apt on land as at sea, the Navy scored 5 successive wins over the Army golf team, thus pointing up their ability to handle a driver as well as a destroyer. Of course, no sports program would be complete without the American national game, baseball. Here in the Army-Navy game has demonstrated the fact that the Academy takes the diamond game seriously. In soccer, our teams prove their ability to adapt themselves to the English game, a game which calls for the use of the head as well as the feet. It is fast, spectacular, and demands the utmost in teamwork. One of the nation's favorite sports, tennis, gets its full quota of attention at the Academy. On these courts are seen matches between midshipmen and some of the brightest stars from the nation's colleges. Though the American Indians started it, the stick and the midshipmen became friends quickly, and lacrosse is now one of the biggest sports at the Academy. Rough, rugged, and demanding, it has become a great spectator sport as well. During my last year, we beat the Army and won the national championship. Usually culminating the spring sports and rounding out the year come the men who run, jump, vault, and throw, trackmen who train against time, height, and distance. That they train well and thoroughly is evidenced by the Intercollegiate Championship, which they are now defending. Great sprint men have graced this track, and in the field events, the Academy's strength has long been predominant. Almost before we realized that we were no longer plebes, a big event came up, the summer cruise. We boarded Navy ships for a 12-week period. This provided us with the opportunity of substituting practice for theory and gave us a taste of life at sea. Some of us were assigned to aircraft carriers. Thus, we're able to continue our study of naval aviation on the big flat tops. We were not qualified aviators, but there were many things to learn about such things as carrier takeoffs, duties of a flight deck officer, air group tactics, and combat air patrols. Fully as exciting as flying the Wild Blue Yonder in one of the Navy's crack dive bombers was the thrill of our first carrier deck landings. Another part of my class boarded mighty battle wagons. Here they learned to run a giant man of war. During the first part of the cruise, one got the idea that the most necessary ingredient for a ship's operation is cleanliness. But we weren't taken along as ballast. On the bridge, we learned signaling. First-classmen received more advanced training, and the practice cruise constituted their initiation as junior officers aboard ship. Dealing with problems of navigation, engineering, maneuvers, they performed their duties on deck, the bridge, and in the engine room. In gunnery practice, we drilled in handling the guns, got acquainted with the ordnance setup, and went through the motions of loading 5-inch anti-aircraft batteries. All these drills had their compensations, however. Shore leave in foreign ports. Our first one is something we never forgot. There were places to visit, things to see, foreign lands, strange people, languages. These served to broaden our viewpoint and improved our understanding of the world and its people. Homeward bound now, and a real thrill came up. Fleet battle practice. I guess the biggest kick came from the fact that we were part of the operation, a part of the accuracy, part of a great fighting machine. Former midshipmen used this training with good results at places like Sicily, Normandy, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. And when the main battery, the 16-inchers, began talking, it was like nothing you ever heard before. Returning, we fell in with a submarine out on a training cruise and watched other midshipmen take her down in a crash dive. After some 12 weeks, we steamed into Chesapeake Bay. The squadron was home, and my first summer cruise had ended. When our faithful friend, Chief Tecumseh, began receiving his weird coat of paint, it meant but one thing: the football season and the game of games was coming up, the classic Army and Navy football game. Tradition has it that the great chief in his fancy war paint helps our team bring home a victory. The left-handed salute, it is believed, clinches the bargain.
This is Municipal Stadium in Philadelphia, and 102,000 football fans from all over these 48 states gathered to witness the classic of the gridiron year, the annual Army-Navy game. 2,100 cadets and 2,700 midshipmen, friendly enemies today, are here to back their respective teams. Actually, the sports heart of all America is here, from the #1 citizen of the nation, the President, to the ordinary football fan. Coach Earl Blake is presenting his noted Army gridiron machine, undefeated for 3 years, heralded as one of the finest football teams of all time. Captain Tom Hamilton, Navy coach, is sending his team to the field today, a 10-1 underdog, given only a fighting chance by its most loyal supporters, but depending on Navy fight to offset the odds. This is the game of games, and the one that will have sports fans talking for years to come. Now in this setting here in Philadelphia, let's take a look at some of the highlights of the most thrilling football game ever played, as Joe Steffi of Army kicks off to Navy, with Bob Schwefferman of Navy taking the ball on his own 5 and coming up to the 31 before he's stopped by the Army front wall. Navy out of the tee with the ball going out to Bobby Schwefferman, who is skirting his left end and makes a small gain before he is stopped by the Army line. Basinger back to punt for Navy, gets off a nice high long one that bounces on the 5-yard line, rolls into the end zone, and Army takes over on its own 20-yard line. Army on the first play of the ball game fumbles, and Newbold Smith of Navy comes in to recover for the blue and gold. Navy on the offense in a T formation. Basinger gives the ball out to Schwefferman, who goes over the right side of his line and makes a small gain before being stopped. Army takes over, and it's Blanchard coming up through the middle of the line, picking up 7 yards before he is stopped. Tucker back to pass, gets good protection, looks for a receiver and finds one, and Glenn Davis far down the field, who takes it over his shoulder and moves to the 13 before Pete Williams finally stops him, and Army moves towards Navy's goal. On the first play, it's Mr. Davis coming out in motion, with Tucker throwing him a short pass. Davis avoids 2 would-be tacklers, charges toward the end zone, and goes over for Army's first score of the game. Army leading 6-0. The Navy comes back and fighting. Pete Williams goes off to the right side, out toward the sidelines, is finally knocked out of bounds after he makes a sizable gain for Navy. In a shift, single wing to the right. Ball goes back to Pete Williams, who starts out toward the right side, cuts back, goes over his own right tackle, and picks up 7 yards before he is hit hard by the Army secondary. Basinger back this time to pass, looks for a receiver, finds one, and Captain Lee Bramlett takes the ball and moves to the 2-yard line before he's hit from behind. Shifting over to the quarter, Basinger goes over in a quarterback sneak and scores for Navy, and the blue and gold is back to this football game, and these middies really get a chance to cheer. Once again, Army takes over now, deep in their own territory. The ball goes this time to Davis, who drives over the right side and picks up 12 yards before he's finally stopped. Davis out in motion. Tucker hits him with a pass, and he moves up to the midfield stripe before he's stopped by the Navy secondary. It's a powerful Doc Blanchard over the right side of his own line and drives to the outside, going to his right and running all by himself away from 3 Navy would-be tacklers, and goes over for the score standing up. Navy takes over once again. Basinger throws out this time to Schwefferman, who comes up the left side of Navy's line and goes to the 24. Army takes over, however, and Davis, behind perfect protection, throws a long pass to Doc Blanchard in the end zone for Army's 3rd score, and they lead 21-6. Navy still fighting at halftime as Pete Williams tries to gain, but Army stops him, and that's the way they stand at halftime. The nation's #1 citizen, President Harry Truman, prepares now to leave the Navy side of the field, escorted by high Navy officials, and to go across the field to meet with the Army. In the usual tradition, the commander-in-chief of both the Army and the Navy splits his time at the football game, sitting first with the host team and then with the visitors. Now we're in the second half of that football game at Philadelphia. Jim Carrington of Navy kicks off a high long one that's taken down there by Rip Rowan of Army, who comes up past the 30 and finally gets to the 40 before he's stopped in there. On a direct pass back to Glenn Davis, he throws one to Barney Poole that's good for 8 yards. Davis forced to kick, punts one that goes out of bounds, and Navy will take over on its own 20-yard line. Basinger flips out to Pete Williams, who goes out around his own right end and finally picks up 13 yards before he is brought down by the Army secondary. Basinger fakes the handoff this time, keeps the ball himself, drives up through the right tackle slot, where he is hit from behind. Basinger again keeping the ball, going back, fades to pass, looks for a receiver, finds one in Art Markell, hits him on the 23, and he moves to the 15 before he is stopped. Shifting, single wing to the right. Ball goes back to Hawkins. He flips it out to Pete Williams, who goes around his own right end to the 4-yard line before he's knocked out of bounds. The Navy surges goalward. Hawkins takes it from Basinger and drives over for a touchdown for Navy. And the midshipmen really get a chance to cheer as Navy fights back. Army with the ball, and Blanchard up through the middle. Powerhouse is through for 10 yards. Again, it's Blanchard trying for the first down, but that big front Navy wall won't let him through, and Navy takes over and also charges the ball again. Basinger throws out to Billy Earl. Billy looks for a receiver and finds one deep in Army territory. And again, the blue and gold moves goalward. At the change of quarters, Navy driving in there for another touchdown is short on its first attempt. Flip out this time to Billy Earl, who throws to Lee Bramlett for the score, and Navy is back in the ball game with the count reading 21-18. Army again in possession, fighting now to hold Navy off. Davis looks for a receiver, throws a long one deep in Navy territory. Pistol Pete Williams takes it over his shoulder at the 10, comes back up with perfect blocking, moving up past the 20, finally gets to the 34 as Navy goes after that fourth and elusive touchdown here in Philadelphia this afternoon. Navy driving down deep now as Tuning, the fullback, drives off the right side, down to the 15, to the 10, to the 5, and he's finally knocked down on the 3-yard line. Time running out on Navy as they try the left side of the line for no gain. This time to the right side, and still that Army line will not let them through. In a single wing now, it's a flip out from Hawkins to Pete Williams, and Pete goes to the 4-yard line where he is stopped, and that's where the ball game ends with Army the winner, 21-18.
The Christmas season brought another round of dances, or hops as we call them at the Academy, and other social events, ending up with a great Christmas ball, and then leave to visit our homes. Girls from almost every state in the Union, over 2,000 of them, parents and friends, were invited aboard for the occasion. Decorated expressly for the evening, Dahlgren Hall became our ballroom. Then came June week, and those traditionally pleasant things associated with the final week at the Academy. First, there was the ring dance held in stately Memorial Hall. Here, the one and only dipped our class ring into a binnacle containing waters flown to the Academy from the 7 seas. Seas that we would soon find ourselves upon. Waters we would learn to know well. Next, on the lush green expanse of Warden Field, came the Parade of Parades, and the last one for my graduating class. The Academy Band, out in full strength, and our own bugle corps, the famous Hellcats, trooped the line. On that day occurs the inspiring ceremony of presenting the colors. They are awarded annually to the midshipman company with the highest record. The winning company comes forward. The color girl, accompanied by the superintendent of the Naval Academy, walked out on the field. The stage was set. First, the national flag. Then the brigade flag was passed to the winning company. kiss as the traditional reward for the winning company commander, and 3 cheers for the company. The day ended and the evening began. In historic Dahlgren Hall, we foregathered with our girls, sweethearts, and frequently they were brides-to-be for the June week farewell ball. Our days at Crabtown, as Annapolis is affectionately known, were drawing to a close. Finally, the day of days arrived. We received our commissions in the United States Navy and Marine Corps and headed for a new and more responsible duty. To protect our country on the seas, beneath the seas, in the skies, and on every beachhead of democracy. To represent our country in every port of call. Our motto, to do the duty that lies nearest us.